The Notre Dame Cathedral, also known as the Notre Dame de Paris, is a historic Catholic cathedral located on the eastern half of the Isle de la Cité in the 4th arrondissement of Paris, France. The cathedral is considered one of the finest examples of French Gothic architecture and has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1991. Construction of the Notre Dame Cathedral began in 1163 under the direction of Bishop Maurice de Sully and was completed in 1345. The cathedral was built on the site of an earlier Roman temple. This Roman temple was the Gallo-Roman city of Lutetia, which was once a pagan city. It started as a temple to Jupiter before being transformed into a Romanesque church. Notre Dame was dedicated to the Virgin Mary, hence its name, which means Our Lady of Paris in French. There are a few unknown facts about the cathedral. The first one is there's recycled architecture on its facade. There are 3 portals on the western facade of Notre Dame, each laden with sculpted saints and sacred scenes, except one does not fit, and that is the portal St. Anne. Its figures, such as the Central Virgin and Child, look stiffer in their poses and less natural in their features compared to other statues. That's because the tympanum, or the semicircular area of decoration, was recycled from a previous Romanesque church. Another fact is there is a forest in its roof. The cathedral contains one of the oldest surviving wood timber frames in Paris, involving around 52 acres of trees that were cut down in the 12th century, each being made from an individual tree. During the French Revolution, 28 statues of biblical kings in the cathedral were pulled down by ropes and decapitated by a mob. They then rediscovered the heads of the 21 kings by doing work in the basement of the French Bank of Foreign Trade. They have now been moved to the nearby Musée de Cluny. The Notre Dame Cathedral was the tallest building in Paris at the time of its construction, and its 2 towers, which rise to a height of 226 feet, were the tallest structures in the city until the completion of the Eiffel Tower in 1889. The cathedral also features numerous ornate sculptures and stained glass windows, including the famous rose window above the main entrance. A few artifacts that can be viewed at the cathedral include the Holy Crown of Thorns, which is believed to have been placed on Jesus' head before he was crucified. You can also view the tunic of St. Louis that Crusader King Louis IX wore when he brought the crown of thorns to Paris after arranging for its purchase from the Latin Emperor of Byzantium. There are also the 13 paintings known as the Maze, which are a series of paintings from the 17th and early 18th century works commissioned by the city's Goldsmiths Guild to give to the cathedral in May of each year between 1630 and 1707. Throughout its history, the Notre Dame Cathedral has been a site of significant events in the history of France. In the 14th century, it was the site of the coronation of King Henry VI of England. In the 18th century, the cathedral was the site of the Revolutionary Festival of Reason during the Reign of Terror. The Festival of Reason, also known as the Cult of Reason, was a revolutionary and anti-religious festival and mocked both Catholicism and suggested the French should worship Enlightenment and principles instead. Until the French Revolution, it was owned by the Archdiocese of France, but on November 2, 1789, it became property of the State of France. During the time of the French Revolution, the cathedral was used as a food storage warehouse. Since it was seen as a symbol of power and aggression for the church and monarchy, it was ransacked and many sculptures and statues were destroyed. During the Napoleonic era, when Napoleon decided to have his 1804 coronation as emperor at Notre Dame, the building was in bad shape. Centuries of decay as the city developed and changed around it, as well as the vandalism of the French Revolution, had left it on the verge of demolition. For years it had been used as a warehouse. When Napoleon declared its return to church use and hosted his grand ceremony within his walls, an event which he famously crowned himself, it brought Notre Dame to new prominence. It would not be until Victor Hugo's novel Hunchback of Notre Dame that would begin to repair the structural integrity of the cathedral. In the 19th century, the cathedral was the setting for Victor Hugo's novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, published in 1831. He wrote the book because of his love for Gothic architecture. He wanted contemporaries to become aware of Gothic architecture, which was being destroyed, neglected, and replaced with other buildings. Victor Hugo's book led to a rise in popularity for the cathedral. This started a restoration project of the cathedral from 1844 to 1864, supervised by Eugene Viollet-le-Duc. In 1914, during World War I, more than 24 German shells hit the cathedral. The wooden scaffolding was set on fire, which in turn lit the oak of the roof. The lead used to seal the roof melted, which in turn set the wooden pews on fire. During World War II, Paris did not see as much destruction as European capitals like London and Berlin. The Notre Dame Cathedral was mostly undamaged from the war. An interesting story comes from the Nazi general Dietrich von Kollwitz, who claims the city and the cathedral were saved because of him. Kollwitz took command of the French capital on August 8, 1944, and was reportedly ordered by Hitler to be prepared to destroy all the historic and religious monuments in Paris. Hitler gave his order to Kollwitz by cable and told him to turn Paris into a pile of rubble. Hitler, on the eve of Paris's liberation, is believed to have asked the general, "Is Paris burning?" This story is rife with skepticism, but is an interesting story. As historians point out, Colitids did not have the men or weapons capable of destroying the capital. When Paris was liberated on August 26, 1944, Notre Dame hosted a special Mass of Thanksgiving to celebrate the liberation and preservation of Paris. Walt Disney Studios made a movie loosely based on Victor Hugo's Hunchback of Notre Dame, called The Hunchback of Notre Dame. It was released in 1996 and would once again bring interest back to the Notre Dame Cathedral. There are a few differences between the book and the novel, though. In the novel, Claude Frollo is the Archdeacon of Notre Dame and takes in Quasimodo while also caring for his younger brother John. His lechery towards Esmeralda will turn him into the novel's antagonist, even though he tries to be a good person. In the film, he is a judge and is established as the villain from the very beginning. Another difference between the book and movie is that in the book, Pierre Gringoire is the protagonist, but in the movie, Quasimodo is the protagonist and Gringoire does not exist. In the novel, Quasimodo is half deaf and blind from the bells, but in the film, he is physically deformed. The Notre Dame had multiple restoration projects, but the most famous one was the one led by Viollet-le-Duc. In 1844, King Louis-Philippe ordered that the church be restored, after Victor Hugo's book was a huge success in getting support to restore the cathedral. The architect who was in charge of the maintenance, Etienne Hippolyte Gaud, was dismissed. He was replaced by Eugène Viollet-le-Duc and Jean-Baptiste Lassus, who made a name for themselves for the restorations of the nearby Sainte-Chapelle. They were appointed in 1844. The next year, Viollet-le-Duc submitted a budget of 3.885 million francs, which was reduced to 2.650 million francs. This budget was exhausted in 1850, and work stopped as Viollet-le-Duc made proposals for more money. By the end of the restoration, it cost over 12 million francs. When Lassus died in 1857, Viollet-le-Duc was left sole architect of the project until its completion on the 31st of May, 1864. He would supervise a large team of sculptors, architects, glassmakers, and other craftsmen, and work from drawings or engravings. Viollet-le-Duc remade or added decorations if he felt they were in the spirit of the original style. One of the items added was a taller and more ornate spire, which was removed in 1786. The restoration also included a statue of St. Thomas. Despite its age and the many historical events it has witnessed, the Notre Dame Cathedral has undergone several major renovations and restorations over the centuries. The most recent and extensive restoration took place in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Today, Notre Dame is still an active cathedral. This means that it is still used for Mass within the Roman Catholic Church and is the main cathedral of the Archdiocese of Paris. It is the seat of the Archbishop. Notre Dame de Paris attracts around 13.6 million tourists a year. 30 million people visit Paris every year to experience the City of Lights. Tragically, on April 15, 2019, a major fire broke out at the Notre Dame Cathedral, causing significant damage to the roof and toppling the spire of the building. The fire was caused by electric wires running through the roof that were placed haphazardly at the demand of the clergy. Even though there was risk of short-circuiting and they were violating safety regulations laid out by the chief architects of historic monuments, the fire was ultimately brought under control and no one was seriously injured. But the cathedral suffered significant damage and will require extensive restoration work. The Notre Dame Cathedral remains a beloved and iconic symbol of Paris and French culture, and its history and architecture continue to fascinate people from around the world.